the way these trends are headed, the direction technology pushes us in. Um, Maybe what you were getting at with your question with AI is like, are we going to end up locked down by some like central authority or handful of big companies deciding how it goes?
I'm Ryan Gresham, and this is Gun Talk Nation. This Gun Talk Nation is brought to you by Ruger, Vortex, Tipton, Range Ready, and Smith & Wesson. Hey, welcome into Gun Talk Nation. Today on Gun Talk Nation, we're going to talk the techie side of guns, both in the content that you consume online and maybe some other stuff. Some smart guys who've been in the tech world. They have, I guess we used to call it a blog, huh? Chuck and Kareem. We've got Kareem Shaya. We've got Chuck Rossi. You guys are with Open Source Defense, which I know we've had Open Source Defense. We've had you on Gun Talk Radio. I think, Tom brings it up from time to time because there's some fun coverage and some good coverage there. But I mean, how would you describe what you guys are doing with Open Source Defense and how did it get started?
Yeah, I think like the way I always put it is our goal is to normalize gun culture. We all have the experience of being, in the past, like the gun guy in some office in New York or San Francisco, and finding this underground world of people out there who just like sidle up to us in the office kitchen and say like, "Hey, I heard you have guns or know about guns or like shooting.
I hear you're holding."
Yeah.
Hey,
exactly.
can I talk to you about guns?
Do you have the stuff? Can you tell me what to buy or take me shooting? Or really what they're saying is like, can you make me feel comfortable being interested in this thing? Or can you make me feel that this is okay?
It's funny because in certain cultures, Chuck, I mean, people feel like it is like this underground thing. You probably want to say to them, it's legal, right? It's okay.
Yeah, Kareem kind of hit it there about this conspiracy. And what we found with OSD, because we live in very blue areas, right? Coastal elitism at its best. At least we did when we started OSD, right? Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if you can appreciate. I know you're in Louisiana now. You've lived in probably more red places where you don't even have to think about this, but you don't appreciate, or a lot of your listeners are not going to appreciate how they're not against it. It's just so foreign. It just does not come up, right? But then that natural desire and attraction for guns and messing around with guns is always there. So we found so many what I'd call closeted gun enthusiasts or gun curious people in these blue kind of havens that it really gave us the kind of the impetus for open source defense to be this place for gun nuts as well as the gun curious. And that's what kind of established our brand, was that we were, I'm going to, just because I'm among friends here, we're like, yeah, we want to get like, I want machine guns through the mail, right? That's the end goal here, right?
Yeah.
But we don't have to lead with that, right? We can just be like, well, yeah, we work together. We're all in tech. We have similar interests. And by the way, you're really interested in guns, and I can help you on board for that.
As far as like our goals with Gun Talk, one of them is to make gun ownership unremarkable. It's like it's not a thing, And also another thing, when you talk to folks who live in maybe a big area, a blue state, whatever it is, they may say, "I don't know anybody who owns guns," and you're like, "Yes, you do. Go ask, and then come back to me." And then weeks or months later, they go, "You know what? Like a third of the people I know own guns." I'm like, "Yeah, you just don't talk to each other about it."
Yeah. I think the other thing that's missing is you touched on this in your podcast a few weeks ago with your dad, and talked about your grandfather and how he was out there taking all the celebrities and going on these big hunts and like all this cultural normal stuff that we lost. And there needs to be, and we've done a little bit of this with our OSD offsites where we take our, we reach out to our mailing list and our subscribers and say like, hey, we're going to do a range day in Austin. Hey, we're going to do a range day in Silicon Valley, in Santa Clara, in Northern California. Who wants to come? And we'll get like some VPs and directors and tech people. We even got Colleen Noir to come out and basically, which was funny because nobody knew who he was.
They weren't.
We're like, oh my god! I'm like, oh my god! Colleen's gonna come to our little dinky shoot. He's gonna come. I'm blown away. And they're like, oh, that guy's pretty good. Who's he?
Right. So guys, how do we grow that gun culture? I mean, how do you guys approach it?
I think it's one of those things like I love the word make it unremarkable. And the thing I always go to is it's like anything else, it's only weird if you make it weird. Right? Like if you approach it as like the way we are normalizing this is like, I'm just gonna treat it like it's normal and manifest that. I think that's the way to do it. Like we often forget, if you have 50 guns and you've owned guns as long as you can remember, we forget how remarkable it is to somebody who does not own any guns and maybe hasn't seen one in real life. I grew up like going skeet shooting once every couple of years or something, but that was my experience with guns. So I was lucky enough to buy my first gun in my mid-20s. So I have firsthand experience of like how hyped people are when they buy their first gun and like enter into this world, just having it in your house and having it like stored away, and then you get it out and just look at it and rack the slide and whatever. Like that is super exciting to somebody who has not done that before. And that doesn't have to be like negative or weird. It can be exciting in the same way that like, buying a new set of golf clubs or something might be if you love golf. But yeah, I think often we get into the politics or take someone to the range and start ranting about like, oh, like the wait time on this suppressor, or can you believe like this SVR is the same as this, 16-inch gun, but it's a felony if you don't go through the paperwork. And like, there's so much baggage you can pile onto this. And I think instead for newbies, we need to just like let it breathe, like let it be the fun, exciting thing that it is.
Yep.
And then just shepherd them along the way and be there to answer questions when they have them.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's like kind of if you are trying to be, and probably if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a gun enthusiast, most likely. And so you are the gun guy in your office. But when we had two people here last week for one of our experience classes that were from Seattle. And so they're like, yeah, we're kind of in the middle of it. And you can get that feeling of like, no one is a gun person around me, but, probably staying away from politics, maybe staying away from the lingo. I mean, gosh, the lingo stuff, the jargon stuff with guns. It's like, yeah, I've got an AR-10. It's in 7.62 by 39. I put a 3-9 on top of it. And, somebody who's like, I'm interested, but I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah, it's on. You make a good point because like it's on. We're all gun nuts, probably listening, and certainly sitting at this table. We've been doing it for years. We have good knowledge. We have seen the evolution of how we do things and how we shoot and everything. You really have to step back if you're going to take someone and have an experience at the range, and just ease up. And I know it's hard because we're all quasi-autistic about guns and just want to go full bore. Like, this is my crazy hobby and you can do this and this is awesome and this and this and this. And it just you really have to make a concerted effort to take someone to the range in a very neutral and flat way. I mean, have them fun, get them safe, but don't worry about every little nuance of grip and stance and trigger, and like get them good fundamentals, but like don't make it a chore and don't overdo the information overload that you're going to feel like you want to give them. Just give them a taste.
Yep. Yeah, a little taste, and probably a little taste for any of us is a lot. Like, man, I shot 4 guns today with my buddy who I work with, and I shot a 9, and I shot a 22, and I shot a rifle. Like, that's a lot, especially if you've never shot a gun before. I mean, you both have backgrounds in the tech world, and I think it's interesting because sometimes for gun enthusiasts, the tech where we all use tech, every single person, even if you're low tech, you're still using it. And it's kind of how we get our information now. It's how we do a lot of things. You guys are navigating that space in an area that's traditionally not, it's just different politically, different, culturally or whatever, perhaps. I want to talk more about that. I want to talk more about the really fun and
Meet the Smith & Wesson
informative
CSX
articles
E-Series,
from Open
because
Source
apparently
Defense.
Smith &
Let's
Wesson
take
took
a
one
quick
look
break,
at their already
and we'll
great
be right back.
CSX pistol and said, yeah, we can do even better. The new E-Series trigger, crisp, clean, smoother than your grandpa's whiskey. And of course, it's optics ready with a clear sight cut so your fancy red dot won't get blasted with carbon like a neglected grill. With 9mm power, up to 17 rounds, and all the upgrades you never knew you needed, the CSX E-Series isn't just an evolution, it's proof that Smith & Wesson refuses to take a day off. Let's be honest, cleaning your gun shouldn't feel like you're wrestling an alligator. Enter the Tipton Best Gun Vise 360, a ball head genius of a vise that holds your firearm at any angle you can dream up, because sometimes gravity is not your friend. Mounting an optic, no problem. Cleaning, easy. General maintenance, it's got you covered. Non-marring jar pads keeps your gun scratch-free. Bottom line, whether you're a gunsmith or just a guy who hates chasing parts across the floor, the Tipton Best Gun Vise 360 is the best thing to happen to firearm maintenance since, well, the firearm. Ever wanted to train at a top-tier shooting facility that used to be a slaughterhouse? Well, dreams do come true. Welcome to Range Ready Training, the home of Gun Talk Media, where we turned an abandoned meat processing plant into one of the best firearm training facilities in the country. Led by Chris Serino, Range Ready offers pistol, rifle, women's only, force on force, and instructor development courses. Whether you're a newbie, a pro, or that guy who thinks watching YouTube makes you an expert, we've got a class for you. So if you're serious about getting better, training smarter, and maybe experiencing a little Louisiana charm along the way, come check out Range Ready Training. Ruger and Magpul walked into a bar and somehow, instead of starting a fight, they built a handgun masterpiece, the Ruger RXM. This American-made pistol is everything you want: exceptional ergonomics, upgraded features, and a price tag that won't require selling a kidney. Bottom line, the RXM is built for you, your budget, and your obsession with tweaking your gun until it's just right. So go ahead and make it yours. Ruger and Magpul already did the hard part. New from Vortex, it's the Viper Shotgun Enclosed Micro Red Dot. Purpose-built for the fast pace of turkey hunting and wing shooting, the Viper Shotgun Enclosed Micro Red Dot delivers an ultra-low profile design and wide field of view for intuitive shooting and superior recoil control. Its enclosed design and integrated universal mount ensures seamless operation and maximum protection against the elements. You can even use it on other things like a lever gun or a tactical shotgun. Check it out from Vortex, the Vortex Viper Shotgun Enclosed Micro Red Dot. So on the About page on opensourcedefense.com or Substack.com, you can find it over there, Substack. It says, we couldn't wait for a gun rights organization that matched our approach to show up, so we created our own, Open Source Defense. How do you guys pick the content that's on there? How do you approach that?
It's a great question because it changes week to week. It comes from a couple things. So what is in the news is often a big driver. And the general approach is take what is in the news and think about it for more than 10 minutes. I think it's very easy and common to do kind of a typical reactive article about something. And I don't even want to make that sound so bad. Like probably somebody needs to be doing that. But I think it's interesting to get away from the politics of stuff and talk about, how does this thing that we think applies to this, court case that came out, or ATF ruling, or whatever's happening in the news. How does that apply to some broader themes that we've seen elsewhere in society that could help people connect dots where they don't think about guns necessarily? So, we write a lot about stuff like administrative law and how that overlaps with the ATF, or even things that get away from law entirely. So we write about technology a lot, decentralization of technology, AI, etc. And that really embraces this idea that guns are a technology, right? Like the people who start tech companies today, if they lived in the late 1800s, they might have been like, Hiram Percy Maxim or
Right.
something, or Samuel Colt or whoever. Like
John
those were
Browning.
the founders of their day.
Yep.
Um, and so, yeah, I think the big thing is like, how can we connect a dot that is not necessarily intuitive, but kind of makes sense in retrospect?
Yeah. Yeah. I like the one recently of the title is Sig Sauer, Sour, on pointing the Sig P320 at your femoral artery. And then just obviously that's one that popped up in the news and is big. But you guys you're covering gun rights stuff. You're covering a little bit of everything, right?
I mean, the value, I mean, Kareem undersells himself. He's an excellent wordsmith, and he is an excellent observer at, like he says, at this higher level. So when you can divorce the organization, the way we set it up is we don't need to be like right up in front, breaking news, like just jumping on the bandwagon. We have no other goals than to get our message out, so we can take time. We only publish once a week on our Substack, and we post on X a bit more frequently to kind of keep current. But, and I would, you all should subscribe to our newsletter at opensourcedefense.com, which will lead you to the Substack and the newsletter subscription, because you will absolutely not get a more kind of thoughtful approach to thinking about the current gun things of the time, of the day, of the week, of the month, than you will from us. Actually, I would say maybe the Reload would be another like good, thoughtful
Steven does
place,
a nice
right?
job with that.
Yeah, Steven's a great job. And so there's not a lot of those sources. I mean, most of us are kind of in a reactive mode because we're getting beat up all the time. So it makes sense that we have people like kind of keeping up, and they should. Like Kareem says, we need that because the velocity of bad stuff happening and good stuff happening needs that immediacy, but that's a pain in the neck and it's a lot of work. We have day jobs. We can afford to be a little bit more thoughtful and kind of back off, let those other guys do the heavy lift of the immediate stuff, guys like you and the more immediate media, the bigger media. And we can take the luxury of stepping back and thinking about it in bigger terms.
Yeah, I mean, it's great stuff. Substack, do you guys find that that's a good place as far as the gun content goes? I mean, it's fairly freedom loving as far as the content goes.
Yeah, you can do content wise, I think pretty much whatever you want. We have not come close to pushing the limits on Substack, and our content generally is um, not edgy in that type of way. Um, Maybe in other ways, but yeah, like Substack is an awesome platform. We're very happy with it.
Yeah, it's interesting as far as looking for sources of information. We're kind of in an interesting time, right? Because people kind of curate their news. They curate what's being fed to them. I mean, we have algorithms, right? But it's also like you can seek out these news sources like a Substack to say this is what I want, and I mean, a la carte, sort of pay for what you'd like to pay for, right?
Yeah, this is going to evolve. You want to talk about technology and kind of where we're going. You're right that we gravitate towards these news areas or these social areas that kind of agree with us that probably, we're all in our little bubbles. But I think, but remember, we're in the first iteration of social media and this re-imaging of news and information. We're the first users. I'm like a Gen X first user of this stuff. My kid, who is around 24, which I guess is what, Gen Z, I guess, he was born with this stuff, especially because his dad was working in tech and social media when he was, just right there. And it's amazing to see that he is already kind of evolved. So there's a business opportunity between kind of the AI that's more and more available and people's awareness that they don't want to be in their bubble, that there's an opportunity here for some sort of news aggregation or a more algorithmic approach, and not in a bad way, but a way to curate and filter and to get a little bit closer to reality through kind of AI models and curation through that.
Really?
Right. And I know I've seen the beginnings of a few of these, like these news aggregators and people who are purposely trying to go for more of the middle of the road and not load themselves up with blue or red baggage. I think that's an opportunity because the amount of information exponentially going up, right? Leveraging an AI system that can make sense of that is inevitable. It's going to happen.
Is that good for the audience? I mean, because people get very, it's like, I really want to use AI, and we use it for certain tasks. I think everybody does, right? But then it's like, AI makes stuff up, AI kind of, and you guys probably know a whole lot more about that than I do. I mean, being in that tech world. I
mean,
is there a reason for concern among gun culture people, the growth of AI?
I think it's less of a concern. I mean, I wouldn't say it's either good or bad. It's how you use it, right? It's like a gun.
Okay.
It's very powerful. It's new, and it's very, it should be accessible to people, and you can do a lot of damage, and you can do a lot of good, and you can even protect yourself from harm with it, a gun and AI. So I would strive for people to keep an open mind. The things personally, and Kareem can, fill in here if I'm off base. But the things I worry about is I don't want AI to be crippled by guardrails and safety systems. I already saw what that did, we all did, in social media, right? And so the hope is it's open enough that the systems that do that, like the classic Google Gemini fiasco, right? Where they did silly images and like that stuff will be less attractive and people will be more attracted to platforms that are open.
Yep.
Right. So the market will kind of drive us to a more open, almost, I don't know if we'll ever get to like a decentralized system, but at least an open system where the market can decide, like, I don't want coloration in my AI models. I don't want guardrails that completely restrict what I can see.
Kind of self-correcting. I mean, we kind of saw this a little bit. It's funny because it feels like we've gone to where the media outlets have chosen a side. And they're like, we're the super conservative guys. We're the super not conservative guys, or whatever, right? And then we had, I think it was Jeff Bezos, who owns the Washington Post, said we're not endorsing a candidate for president. And it was kind of funny as he said that. He went, well, it's probably good for business, but also it did make a point of like, wait a minute, why are we endorsing a candidate? We're just supposed to be covering this stuff. He said this, this is what happened. It's neither good or bad. It is just what happened. Okay. But we've gotten so far away from that. Maybe we're swinging back towards that.
I think we are, yeah. And I think generally, when we think about the way these trends are headed, the direction technology pushes us in, maybe what you were getting at with your question with AI is like, are we going to end up locked down by some like central authority or handful of big companies deciding how it goes? Peter Thiel had this quote a while ago that like, I think it was AI is authoritarian and crypto is like freedom loving, or some I don't know if those were his exact terms, but this idea that like crypto is a decentralizing force and AI is this like centralizing authoritarian force. I think actually, like, fortunately, that is not the way it is headed. Like, I think it's like we see with guns. It's like we see with software technology generally. Like, generally, the answer when something is going wrong with a technology is you innovate your way out. You don't ban your way out or restrict your way out. Yeah. And so, like AI, I think 2 years ago, the fear was like, okay, you're going to have a handful of companies who lock this thing down, and it's everything's going to be covered in everything's going to be nerfed. Actually, now you have like super powerful open source models that you can do whatever you want with, that are way more powerful than the best models from the best companies even like a year or two ago, and that's only going to accelerate. So I think my hopefully not naive view is I think we actually don't have much to worry about there in the long run.
I wonder if there's a way for somebody who wants to communicate the 2A message, how would you recommend that they use AI? Or is there kind of like, hey, here's a couple ideas for you that might be helpful?
I think the models, there's a couple things there. So there's the more open models like DeepSeek and Grok, who are more like seem less biased to me. So you can get like they'll get more information that's going to be more neutral on those subjects. But like the thing you're missing here, and right now it's a little too technical. I could walk you through it, but you can build an AI model on your laptop. There's enough open source stuff out there where you can get the training data, you can feed in your own training data. Think about like, you of all people, Ryan, would know this, like the body of work in book form of like all the old hunt stuff, all the old masters of the gun craft, all the evolution, all that data can be fed into that Adobe laptop in front of you, can be fed in, the model, trained. We'll spend a couple grand to train it off site, but then we'll get those models, and you can build the Gun Talk LLM, yourself. And it's going to be the Second Amendment authority on history, intent, and eventually deduction on like what this all means. And for God's sakes, it's going to be like, well, can you improve on this design that was from 1909 by this man called John Browning? Right. And it'll say like, oh yeah, if you just move this here and do that there, you can get rid of 5 hard parts and make it more reliable, right? So yeah, absolutely. I think that genie's out of the bottle. We just need smart people to just make it more accessible to more people.
Well, and as you guys kind of indicate, there are gun lovers everywhere with different skill sets, and they may not live in rural Louisiana. They may have a background in tech or engineering or whatever that might be, or they're willing to jump in. I think that's the kind of the point. I want to talk about open source defense capital. What is this, and what have you guys got working?
This is the investing arm of OSD. I mean, what we found from running the newsletter, Instagram, Twitter for years, from Chuck's like very extensive contacts in his long career at Meta, like kind of being the liaison between Meta and the firearms industry. We talked to tons of founders and executives of, tiny companies making 10 grand a year as a side project to companies doing hundreds of millions in revenue. And like to a person across that whole spectrum, when we look at what we can take for granted in the tech space for startups in terms of like support for like funding, advice, expertise, hiring, like all of those things that make an ecosystem thrive are just absent in the firearms space. And I think like if you believe in gun rights, if you want the future of the Second Amendment to be strong, that's a huge problem because the products have to be really good. And we need really smart people building companies in this space. So I think there's like a couple forces that help. One is just technology, the internet. If you are in rural Louisiana, I think you have way more options today for how can you like create something valuable and get that out into the world. And we're starting to see that like kind of like cool startups from people who value gun rights and want to build a company around that. We're seeing more and more of that. And then the other thing is we want to just like make a mafia for founders in the space, like get them funding, get them advice, help them with hiring. And I want them to be able to take for granted all the same things that tech founders can take for granted in terms of like an ecosystem that's there to help them thrive.
Well,
So that's OSD Capital. We're like doing investing basically, and also just helping companies with like advice, expertise, hiring, etc.
Well, sometimes like the venture capital world, and we hear about it a lot in tech, and it's become almost the judgment of a company, perhaps. And I see it when you read business magazines, Inc. or whatever, right? It's like, well, they've got this much funding, this, and for a lot of people, they go, are they making any money? Like, do they have a product? Like, is it just like, let's see if we can do something before we run out of all the investors' money? Like, that's part of it, right? Like, but,
For sure.
but then we're also in a world where if you're in e-com and you could be a flashlight company, whatever, and you sell direct to consumer on your website, you are judged against Amazon. And it's completely unfair, but it's like, what do you mean you don't have free 2-day shipping? What do you mean I can't cart all this stuff together or whatever these things are? Where it's like we're all judged against this really cool stuff that perhaps maybe Amazon's not the perfect example, but like couldn't be created without some pretty hefty funding and, being able to hire the right people and systems in place. I mean, is that right?
It's interesting. You're right in that it's hard in like a street consumer space. So if you're building a widget, you do have to consider Amazon. I will say that Amazon, like every other social platform and commerce platform, does not like our stuff. So we almost have, I want to call it an advantage that we can't get on there and that they do have to go to your site. So yeah, the widget part is hard. So we have looked at a few things that are a few companies, entrepreneurs and startups that are building physical things. They're a challenge. Also because the space needs to be something that really grows the space because we need more shooters, more people interested in this stuff. But there's plenty of stuff in other services. Like one of our big first investments is something that is an ad network for, it's actually not even a network. It's a platform, a programmatic ad platform for 2A stuff that's completely happy to run your ad for your new gun, your ammo, your accessories, anything. And that is growing very rapidly with a good set of publishers and a good set of advertisers because there's just millions upon millions upon millions of dollars locked up in all the companies that you talk to and that we're familiar with that absolutely cannot advertise on any social platform. Right. They are not welcome, right? So like there's a couple greenfield areas like that where regular industry and regular consumerism is shut out. Anything sporting goods or 2A related, we need startups in that space to pick it up. And that could be a commerce site, could be like banking and card processing. And yes, it's complicated because it's a multi-tiered stack there, but like all these things can be taken a run at. So we want to help enable companies to do that.
So are you guys in this OSD Capital, are you looking, obviously you're looking for companies to help fund, but are you looking for investors or is it more of looking for these opportunities to support?
I mean, the biggest thing is kind of what you mentioned, going back to what you mentioned of like, you look at tech companies and it's like, are you making money or like, where is all of this investment going? And that's a very valid observation, yet it's profitable because every so often a company ends up being worth $100 billion. And that will pay for a lot of wasted money in other companies.
Right.
And so that industry ends up being profitable. I think the core thing that we are looking to solve here, and like if we make this work, this is where the success hinges. Like investors will come if on their own if this is solid. Is like, can this be done in a way that scales, right? Like we can't, if a company is making a cool widget, like maybe, whatever, some accessory for ARs or something, but the ceiling for that company is it's maybe going to sell like $1 million a year and be run profitably and be a great business for the founder. Like that's awesome. That's a really cool company. That's great for the founder, but that is not a company that you can invest in.
Right.
As an investor, because there's not going to be much return, and there's certainly not going to be enough return to pay for all the companies that don't work out. And so that's the key thing is that we want to see in this space is companies that can scale dramatically and can grow 50x, 100x. And I think 10 years ago, that would have been very few and far between. But what we're seeing to your other point about like, well, if you're making flashlights, are you just in a race to the bottom on Amazon with Chinese manufacturers? What we're seeing is the companies that can scale and can get around that are kind of playing a different game. So like look at, companies from the past 5 or 10 years that have done really well. Like, we're friends with the T-Rex Arms folks and Filster Holsters and Faro Concepts. And, there's a bunch of these companies that I think are doing a really great job building a brand, building a business on their own terms. They sell on platforms and places that they choose to sell, and they can demand that value. They can kind of opt out of a race to the bottom because they've built a following and they make great products. Um, and so I think that's the key thing is like finding companies and cultivating an ecosystem where companies um, play a different game that they can win on their own terms and get to like real scale that is investable.
And do you think that it sounds like, I mean, you've got one that's kind of a service, software service type of thing. We're such a physical product industry, is it physical products or is there something else? I mean, where do you think the opportunities might lie?
I think it's both, right? Like there's physical products for sure, like the companies I just mentioned all make physical
Mm-hmm.
products. Um, but one thing we're seeing a lot, and we talked about this with a bunch of people, is that it feels like there's this kind of swirling storm around like 3D printing, drones, radios, AI. And, is that like a drone perimeter security system for your house? I don't know. Is it like some new advance in radios? I don't know exactly what that is. Um, but whatever it is, like, I'm pretty sure it's going to involve both software and some physical good, and probably the two of those working really closely together.
And I mean, what you guys are saying is there are these companies that exist that have great potential to scale, but they don't have access to that seed capital to help them get there, right?
Yeah, it's more than that. It's so they're playing on hard mode across the board. So first of all, there's a million VCs out there. My wife is a engineer and she's working on a startup with a friend that just goes off and like, I don't know if you're an entrepreneur, you know this deal. You have a pitch deck. It's a 12-minute deck. You got to get through it, and you want to apply to like a bunch of VCs. Well, they wrote an engine that goes out and helps with this. And just about, how how many VCs they have in the database so far? It's over 6,000, almost 8,000. So you could literally apply to 8,000 VCs if you. That's just VCs. That's not even angel groups or other forms of capital. Mm-hmm. So there's plenty out there, but like if you go there and say like I have a really cool new, and this is one of the people we talked to and is doing quite well, I have a new cool simulation gun that makes it so you don't have to use UTM or simunitions, which got all sorts of hosted issues. It's super realistic M4, works perfectly like you would, but you can run it, with no, effectively a mega airsoft kind of thing, but much better. And that's like a reasonable thing. And it's not even a freaking gun. Doesn't count as a gun. They couldn't, they can't get funding from any VC group or anything. So like even benign stuff like that is problematic. So they don't have access to capital. And then the whole host of, like Kareem was saying, like if you're a Y Combinator, which is an incubator for software, you have access to mentorship, you have access to tools, you have access to networks and like all sorts of events and conferences. And you have business tools out there. These guys can't even use the business tools that are out there for entrepreneurs. Like, we can't accept you build a gun widget. You can't be on our platform. Right. And it's something that manages like bookkeeping, right? Or streamlines your operations. It's like we ran into this just starting the fund, right? We got thrown off one platform to manage our $3 million fund, saying like, okay, you're going to take a chunk of our money and like, let's get set up. And they're like, no, you do gun stuff. Can't be on our platform for raising money.
Wow.
That's how bad it is.
Well, and also you think just kind of bigger picture long term. I know you guys have probably thought of like, if we're advancing gun rights growing the gun culture, normalizing it, making gun ownership unremarkable, the more you see these companies grow from a $10 million company to a $100 million company, and they are reaching a lot of people with their message, whether it's a service thing or a product thing. It's like going, yeah, this is completely normal. People shoot guns, people protect themselves, all that stuff, right? It's just, if we can grow those companies to be household names, and talked about maybe in more broad conversations, just around people's daily lives, I mean, that's good for gun rights.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that is essential for gun rights.
Yeah, I don't want to be negative, but that big little rant, that little rant I gave, there are cracks in this facade. Like, it's been this way for a while, but I will say, I mean, certainly because of maybe more recent events and election results and things, like, there are cracks in the facade now. So we're talking, like, we have people, potential LPs, limited partners in the fund, who are coming from industries that if I told you who they were executives at, you'd be like, you're kidding, right? So those cracks in services, those cracks in the investors who want to come in are absolutely starting to show. And just for the OSD Capital, there's two takeaways I want people to have here. One, on the entrepreneur side, if any of your listeners have or know of people who are doing interesting things, innovative things in this space, we absolutely want to talk to you. They can, through our website, there's an email, fund@opensourcedefense.com. We'd love to talk to entrepreneurs. We're a friendly place. You can at least go through your pitch deck, even though if it's not right for us, we're happy to help you and act as mentors and connectors as far as networking. And then if you're an investor, if you have capital that you want to deploy, you're what's called an accredited investor, and you have capital you want to deploy, we are a place that you can consider. Like, I want to help, I want to find opportunities in this space. No one else is going to take your money but us, and we are probably the best well-connected people to deploy it into this space right now.
Wow.
So those are the two asks. So entrepreneurs and investors, if they're interested, they should get a hold of us.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. Well, thanks, guys. This has been fun. I mean, you guys are doing some really, really innovative stuff, and probably pulling some folks out of the woodwork, so to speak, that were like, oh, it's safe to come out? Yeah, it's okay. We're friends here.
That's the idea.
It's awesome.
Well, that's it for us, guys. Go check them out, opensourcedefense.com. Chuck, Kareem, thank you very much. That's it for us, and we will see you next time on Gun Talk Nation.